Do you ever have old songs pop up in your head? I'm sitting up there, you know what's going through my head? There's a fire on the mountain tonight. No place to run, no place to hide. Well, would you be all right if you had to die tonight? Because there's a fire on the mountain tonight. Duh. You know, that was like 30 plus years ago when I was doing youth ministry. But yet, the idea of fire is unique, especially to this particular parsha. Because, see, fire does one of two things in the Holy Scripture. It either purges or destroys. But yet, it is the righteous who go through the fire. Let me take you back a little bit to Avram. You know, Avram, he had a vision. And he had sacrificed animals to God and split them and set them apart. And in his vision, he saw a smoking flax and a torch pass between the animals. This was a sign of a covenant. And the signs of the covenant would be both fire and smoke. And during this time of vision, what's happening in Avram is God is saying to him, your children are going to go into bondage, but I will bring them out. I find it most interesting that when we read this parsha, what happens? But God brings forth a pillar of fire and a pillar of smoke, in keeping with the promise he gave to Avram. Now, as I was reading this, you know, I'm kind of like really into Moses. You know, I think most men get a Moses complex thing going. You know, let my people go. You know, I even got a staff at home. I'll be honest with you, and you know, kind of lean on the staff and do the Moses thing. Okay, but I find it most amazing that God gave Moses the protection of holy fire, and at the very same time, a piece of the action and the deliverance of the people. You see, the deliverance of the people, the salvation of the people is everything to heaven. Everything. God would not only part the Red Sea, but dry up the ground from where he parted it so they could pass. You know, it dawned on me this week that there were really two miracles there. The parting of the Red Sea was one. But you know, you separate the water, it's great. But what do you do about the mud and the silt? He had to dry the ground out in order for them to tromp across it and carry their heavy loads and not get bogged down so the Egyptians would catch up to them. And so as I'm realizing this, you know, the salvation of Israel is worthy of a double portion, a double miracle. In most cases, there's always a double miracle. It's like the mitzvahs, the commandments of God. They come both with the blessing and the curse. God very seldom does anything singular. But as they were crossing the Red Sea, the Sea of Reeds, you understand why the Egyptians didn't come after them immediately. Because the scripture says, and the angel of the Lord went behind Israel, and the pillar of smoke and the pillar of cloud, the pillar of fire, there it appeared. And actually, he went behind them at night. And once again, the Egyptians knew tangible darkness. You remember tangible, right? Okay, so deep, so dark, they felt it. In fact, in the tangible darkness, it absorbs like it's like a personal black hole. Okay? But on the side of Israel, on the side of the children of Abraham, there was light. I found it interesting that no one got burned. Okay? And that the light is for the sake of the righteous. For the sake of the chosen. For the sake of those who will follow after God with all their heart. So here we have this image that we start with Abraham, and it's fulfilled with Moses and the children preparing to cross the Sea of Reeds. Moses extends his hand, not because he's somebody, but because he was told to. And as Moses extended his hand, God performed the miracle, the parting of the waters and the dry ground. But I also find it interesting that the pillar of fire, the pillar of cloud, never left the presence for 40 years. It would move and they would follow. You see, this whole issue of fire, this purging element, is the idea that God will give light to his people, and yet it will purge them at the same time. When Moses went to the burning bush, was Moses burned? No. Was Moses purged? Yes. He submitted a piece of his free will and became the servant of the Most High God at that moment. So when you come in contact with holy fire, remember, it changes you. And of course, you remember the story of, this is going to be a couple of weeks from now, but the story of Aaron's son who brought strange fire before God that cost them their lives. There's only the holy fire. Now, just so you know, I'm not completely crazy. When God came down upon the mountain of Sinai and there began to present to the people their law and their culture, and he began to create Jews out of the children of Israel and out of the nations that came with them, it said that the fire and the smoke on the mountain caused the earth to tremble, and the sound of the shofar rumbled. And the people knew that God was present because of the holy fire and the smoke. Once again, how would they relate to this fire and smoke? Because it was the same as a pillar of fire and the pillar of smoke. Even on the day of Shavuot, the day of Pentecost, the fire, the tongues of flames came and set upon their heads. And they spoke as the Spirit gave them utterance. But were they burned? No. Were they purged? Yes. Oftentimes the most significant purgings of our life come in the midst of crises. When your back is against the Egyptians or the wall, and there's no place to move but forward, and fear begins to overtake you. Al Terah, Al Terah. Fear not, for I am with you. In the presence of God's righteousness and in the presence of His holiness, we need to fear not. Matter of fact, we need to be encouraged. But most people, when they experience something they don't know, there is an element of fear, which, by the way, is healthy. It's respect. You don't go bumbling forward. But there's a fear that can overtake us, and that fear can cripple you. The children of Israel were many times crippled because of the fear. If they hadn't seen the water part because Moses went first, they never would have entered into it. Fear is in direct contradiction to righteousness. And yet, we are, in essence, at war with ourselves over what we know, what we believe, and sometimes what we experience. Like most people, I wrestle with this subject quite often. And I finally came to a workable conclusion that I will never abandon what I know for what I don't know. I will never let fear overtake me because I don't know or because I don't understand. I won't let fear overtake me because what I do know